Hi everybody and welcome to Omaha 8 or better winning at high-low poker. And what we're going to look at today is how to face an opponent who is very aggressive. Someone who is trying to take all your chips through pure force. And we're going to look at three questions. What starting hand should I play? How should I play post-flop? And how can I maximize my return? Now, we're going to be looking at a game of Limit Omaha 08, played on PokerStars at level 50 cents, $1. And this is a session that I played recently. We'll look at a few hands played by me and my opponents, analyse the play, and see what lessons we learn. So let's start three hands into the session. I'm Iggy Pop 77, I'm on the top left there. There's a raise in front of me, and I've got a pretty average hand, by a weak hand in fact, by Omaha 8 standards. I can only make a very weak low. It's pretty difficult for me to make the nuts in either direction. But after a raise in front, that's a clear fold. We see, first thing to notice here is that after the button raises, the big blind, almost 71, re-raises or three bets. And normally to re-raise in the big blind in Omaha 08 signifies a very strong hand. Maybe aces, ace-2, ace-2-3, for example. Now the flop comes down 2-2-3, and that means that if Amos had ace-2, he's just made trips. Anyone with an ace-4 or ace-5 could be drawn to a wheel. Now, it's a pretty dangerous looking flop. Amos leads out with a bet. Cannon Lee and What's Up Doc both call, and then the 5 of hearts on the turn means that there's now a possible wheel out there. Anyone with ace-4 has the wheel, the best low hand in Omaha 8 poker. We get another bet from Amos, a call from Cannon Lee, and now What's Up Doc raises. And to raise on a board like this, I think you've really got to be claiming you have the wheel. It's quite difficult to raise without the wheel, I would have thought here. Amos is not deterred and he calls, but Cannon Lee decides enough is enough and quits. The river, a harmless looking 9 of spades. Got a bet from What's Up Doc, a call from Amos, and let's see what the players have got. So What's Up Doc does indeed have the wheel, ace 2, 3, 4, 5, and he's also got 4-6 makes a 6 high straight. And Amos has ace 6, jack 9, so not very much. He has the second nut low and 2 pair for a high. And on the turn, he was hanging in there. All he was doing was drawing to a flush on a paired board. So looking at that hand, a bit of a surprising raise from Amos pre-flop. I don't think the hand warranted that raise. And he was pretty clingy there after he faced aggression on the turn. He didn't give up lightly. So let's take that early lesson from that first hand. Rolling through a few minutes. I'm picking up mainly weak hands. I don't get much chance to see any action myself. But that's okay because I'm observing the opponents and seeing what they're up to. And Amos has been raising about half of his hands and playing about 80% of his pots so far, which is aggressive. And again, he raises first in here. Everybody else calls. Although this looks like being a family pot, I have a very poor hand, again in Omaha 8 standards. I can't make a low. And it's quite difficult for me to make a nut high without a suited ace. So and I'm in the blind. It's just not worth playing this hand. I fold and keep myself out of trouble. Everybody else sees the flop. Let's see what happens. So anyone with 2-3 would have the nut low now. Almost bets. He's saying this flop likes him. Hartono now raises. So he is also saying this ball's hit him hard. He's claiming perhaps to have a 2-3. Or maybe a set, perhaps a nut flush draw with low cards. And Rusky and Cannon Lee are quite happy to stay in the game as well. And now Amos re-raises, so he's saying he also likes this flop. He seems to like most flops. Then we're going to cap, and 4 people see the capped flop, see the turn. So 1 or 2 of them must be lying, you suspect, or overvaluing their hands. Now, interesting card on the turn. This has completed the flush, if anyone was drawn for the flush. If anyone had 2-3 for the nut low, they've just been counterfeited. If anyone had 3-4, they just made the wheel. Amos says it was him. He bets. Get a call from Hotono and 2 calls from the other chaps. The turn, the board is paired. So could there be a full house out there now? Amos bets again. Cool. Get a raise now from Rusky. So he's perhaps claiming full house. Cannon Lee calls. Of course, the double raise there. And everybody else calls. Let's turn the cards over. Rusky indeed made a 4-outer on the river to make a full house. And he got lucky there, I think, if he's going to pick up half the pot, because he could have easily been beaten on the turn by a flush. And indeed, Cannon Lee had a 6 and a 10 high flush on the turn and got rivered. Although I don't have much sympathy for people who chase with 10 high flushes. Hotono had a very nice hand, so he had the nut low with 3-4, making a wheel. And if you note on the flop, he had the wheel and he had the nut low and he had counterfeit protection. So he's going to win the low half. And Mr. Amos had 2-3-7 jack, not a good hand. A lot of things needed to go right for him. Well, he got a great flop and then he got counterfeited and he didn't give up. So we've seen another example of Mr. Amos betting, raising liberally early doors and being clingy and not giving up. We've seen Hotono play quite reasonably. He could have arguably raised on the river. Perhaps he was worried about being quartered, but with 4 players in the pot, being quartered is not actually a problem. You're not going to lose money with 4 of you in the pot. Rusky, a bit loose there, and Cannon Lee very loose. So let's roll it forward another few minutes and look at our third hand out of 4 that we're going to look at today. Again, I've got a junky hand in early doors. I fold. Surprise, surprise, I got a raise from Amos. 4 people see the flop. And again, surprise, surprise, after a bet from What's Up Doc, Amos raises. 4 people see the turn. Now, anyone who's chasing the flush has just made it. There's now a low draw on board. To keep going in this position, really, with this flop, you need something pretty good here. If you haven't got the flush, the nut flush, if you haven't got ace-3 drawing for the nut low with perhaps some counterfeit protection, I would be a bit reluctant to keep going here in a 4-way pot. But 2 of these chaps do keep going, so we see 3 people see the river, another club, and now completes a possible low. And we're getting used to this again. Almost bets, Rusky calls. What's Up Dog gives up the ghost. So what are our opponents going to turn over? Rusky, Amos, he hit a set of 2s on the flop, and that's all he has. A set of 2s. He has no low because his 2 and his 6 have been counterfeit protected, been duplicated. And Rusky has 4-5 for the best low, and he has a queen high flush. So Rusky actually takes the whole caboodle. And what do we learn about this? Well, Amos had a good hand pre-flop, which was reasonable, I guess, to raise. A low, actually, he probably could have just called, encouraged a multi-way pot to see if he hit his nut low. And Rusky was doing some chasing there again with a pretty second best hand, but got lucky. Second best hand both ways. He could have easily have been beaten both ways, but he won the whole shooting match there. So some lessons we've drawn from these first 3 hands is that Amos is playing very aggressively, other players are playing loosely, and people are not giving up pots very easily. So it doesn't look like an easy table to bluff, but it does look like a table where if we hit a good hand, we could make a lot of money. So this continues to be a session where I pick up very few hands. Very tight game here when I'm playing. But finally I'll pick up a great hand, ace-2, 3-4, under the gun. The ace is suited as well, which is good. Now, if this was Hold'em and you're playing under the gun, 6 max, you're invariably raising because you want to thin the field. The blinds come around pretty often. It's quite good just to win the blinds. Put pressure on your opponents by raising. Difference with 08 is the blinds still come around at the same speed, but with a hand like ace-2, 3-4, I would really like a multi-way field, because if I hit, and I hit the nuts, either high or low, I really probably want as many people in as possible. Not only that, hands are so close together in value that if I raise and I get a caller, I'm not necessarily, if I don't hit, I'm going to be in trouble. I'm going to be playing a bigger pot out of position on the flop and the turn. So I choose to limp, and if I'm going to do that, I've also got to think about disguising my cards. So if I'm going to play this strategy, I've got to probably think about often limping when I'm first or second in. So it is a different strategy to Hold'em. Raising is probably okay, but there's a lot of merits in limping here, especially that I know that Amos is likely to raise me anyway, whatever I do, and I don't really want to be in a heads-up pot with him out of position. I'd rather get multi-way. Now, after Amos does raise, I use the opportunity now to inflate the pot, because the other two chaps are not going to go anywhere. They're definitely going to be seeing me now to the flop, and to my delight, we get a cap from Amos, and we get a big pot seeing the flop. So, and I hit in big style. I've got a nut flush draw, I've got the nut low draw, and I've got counterfeit protection. So any three or ace 3 or 4 gives me the wheel for the nut low. Any 6 gives me 6 high straight, and any club gives me a flush. So it's an absolutely tremendous flop. I want to get as much money in as possible. I want to keep both opponents in, I think, because I still need to hit. And knowing that Amos is going to bet, why do the pulling when the donkey will do the pushing? So I limp, Amos bets, and now I raise. Just a bit disappointed he didn't cap it again. But anyway, we've got quite a bit of money, and now see the turn, it's a blank, 9 of spades. I bet, and now, surprise, surprise, Amos raises me. I've got still, I'm sure, pretty good equity here. Any card of 8 or below is going to make me money. Any club is going to make me money, I guess, as long as it's not a paired board, as long as it's not 9. But maybe not quite strong enough to cap it, so I just call. And that's a decent-ish card on the river, an 8 of hearts. So I've made the nut low, and after I check, waiting for the obligatory bet from Amos, and now I decide to raise. Now, against tight, solid players, I'd be worried about being quartered here with someone else having ace 3. These two chaps have been playing a lot of pots, so I think their ranges are much wider. And whilst I don't rule ace 3 out, I equally think with both of them they could be there with 2 pair. They could be there with a weaker low. They could have possibly had even something as weak as top pair. Wouldn't surprise me if one of them was chasing a flush draw as well. So I generally feel I can inflate the pot here, and I expect more times than not I'm not going to be quartered. So let's see what they both have. Amos turns over ace 2 4 7. That was a good starting hand, but it didn't really go very far for him. And he had the second nut low, and he's got a pair of 2s for high. Lumbersaw had 3 4 Jack Jack. Now, believe it or not, his jacks are going to take the high half. His 3 4 wasn't good enough for low. He got lucky here, Lumbersaw, on one half the pot. But his hand, 3 4 Jack Jack, is really difficult to play because he can't know where he was in that pot. He really must be surprised that his jacks held up for high. And he would be optimistic to think that his 3 4 was going to be not low, or best low. So I think he got lucky, and his playability of his hand was poor there. And that's the reason why you shouldn't really dabble with 3 4 Jack Jack in a multi-way pot. Anyway, I won half the pot, inflated pot. I almost went away with nothing. Nice hand for me, and I end up for the session despite not playing many hands. So let's think about what we've learnt from this session then. We asked ourselves, what starting hand should we play pre-flop? How should we play post-flop? And how can we maximise our return? What did we learn? We're playing starting hands against people who are loose and aggressive. You want hands that can feel a bit of heat pre-flop and that can hit the board hard. Because on the flop and the turn, you're rarely going to bluff against aggressive opponents who don't fold often. And you're going to push your edges where you do. When you've got good equity, you've got to put as much money into the pot as you can. And sometimes you'll use check raises to do so. So I hope you enjoyed that session. I'll be back soon. Hope to see you again here soon. In the meantime, a reminder that if you want to look at my book, Omaha 8 or Better, Win the High-Low Poker, it's available now on Amazon. And unless you're facing me, I wish you good luck at the tables.